We have our superintendent today, Reverend Dave Wells, and he oversees ministry for us globally. He's very engaged with us provincially, and we want to queue up some questions for him and want you to be able to text them in. You see how you text in the questions. They'll come onto my iPad here. We have Paul Borden, whom you've been able to sample some of really a lifetime of experience of coaching churches and denominations. So we'd like to just get right to your questions. Do you want to come up? We've got about 20 minutes here that we're going to be able to work with. And so, gentlemen, I'll kind of go in the middle. Let's see, we need a microphone for you. And we'll tee them up for you guys. I'd like to start off with Dave. Obviously, we're talking about a lot of vitalization stuff and so on here as kind of an OBT in Alberta. This is not new to you. You've been pushing some stuff for a number of years here on vitalization, what it takes to be vital. But where do you see this church vitalization thing fitting into the bigger agenda as you look across the country, across the districts, whatever? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, thanks, Gary. As you're probably well aware, in first 5 years of my leadership, I came to a place where we did a serious summer of evaluation, and it led to bringing things forward to our general executive, including the hard stats, which I say leaders are responsible for both the math and the art of evaluation. The math is to know the statistical stuff that doesn't vary, that tells you what it's happening, and then, but there's also the revelation understanding that leaders, messengers in the life of the church are to have ears to hear what the Spirit is saying and be able to respond as the Spirit, through the Lord of the church, evaluates the church. And all of us share that responsibility, and I want you to know I carry that pretty heavy as a national superintendent, to have ears to hear, but also to keep track of the stats. So we were looking at the number of churches that had closed, had been planted, et cetera, seeing very incremental growth, but really more of a plateau. And from that came the 2020 initiative that is an integrated picture out of the revelation of spiritual vitality, theological vitality, and missional vitality. And to ensure missional vitality, we communicated that we would have a shared vision for revitalization and multiplication. And so right away we began to put focus on revitalization as part of this shared vision. All of the districts leaned in. We developed a revitalization working group that had people that had been engaged in church revitalization, either in a continual manner like Gary. So Gary was involved right off the bat. Bob Jones from Central with now North Point with their whole story of revitalization. And then across the country, some rural stories and so on. And we wanted to expose our constituency to just good news that, just like you've done here this week, that the Lord can come and breathe fresh life into a congregation in any context. We believe that. And but leadership has to take responsibility for that evaluation, to look at the hard facts, but also to have ears to hear what the Spirit would say within their context about how they then respond. So what's been encouraged this week, of course, is right in the sweet spot of what we're calling within the life of our fellowship. And as Gary knows, at the district superintendent's table and the general executive table, it's national. All our districts are leaning in, engaged in revitalization and multiplication.
Paul, question for you, fun question, I think. Yesterday, somebody just kind of observed the obvious. The majority of our churches are 1 to 100. They're not 1,000 plus. So in this category, the 1 to hundreds, what would be one piece of advice you would give to the 1 to 100 size church to break through that 100 barrier?
A fourth assumption that I work with that I didn't talk about is that churches from 0 to 200 are like apples. Most churches never get past 200. Now, I'm going to get to the 100 in a minute, but most churches never get past 200. Churches from 200 to 1,000 are like oranges. And churches from 1,000 to now in Latin America, churches of 40,000 are just simply bigger oranges. Small churches are small because they are designed to be small. And large churches are large because they're designed to be large. And so when we work with small churches, we teach them that if they want to see growth and health and all that goes with it, that they need to act like an orange while they are still an apple. And so when I work with churches of 20 or 50 or 70, we teach them how to act like a large church. And it's amazing how God often then helps them begin to grow and to go through the growth barriers.
Well, that resonates with me. Dave, we've talked about, some of the hills we got to climb as PAOC. And, that's great. We don't mind challenges. But somebody here has asked, what is your greatest encouragement when you look at our fellowship?
Well, I do see it through the lens, you might not be surprised, by that Revelation matrix, and then look to see leaders, churches, other ministries. I would point out that 60% of our active credential holders are actually on pastoral staffs, either as lead pastors or pastoral staff, but 40% are engaged in other ministries where they also have to have vitality. Their ministries, whether it be a missional ministry, our global workers, our chaplains, all of them should be thinking through the same lens about how they be about the Great Commission to make disciples. I want to encourage that. And so with that, I am encouraged that I think we're actually catching that. And we do see, first of all, in the spiritual revitalization area, spiritual vitality, I do sense a fresh wave of dependency striking our leaders, striking our churches, knowing that we can't go it alone. We can't be nice enough. We can't be strategic enough. We need to be nice, loving. We need to be strategic, but we do need Him. And we're totally being pushed back to what made us burst forth over 100 years ago. Hunger, thirst. We love Him. We're dependent on Him. We need His Spirit. We need the Spirit's giftings and enabling. That actually encourages me, Gary, because I see freshness. I see prayer movements. I see people hungry for the presence of God. This is all part of vital churches. And other ministries. And then flowing from that, we abide in Him and His Word abides in us. That's the scripture I led this conference with. First of all, why? Because truth matters. It's truth that transforms lives. It's why Gary goes about talk and tell. You've got to tell something. You've got to share good news. And it's truth that sets free. And in a society where the blind lead the blind and where deception even touches very deeply into the life of churches, I'm glad that we're a fellowship that likes to do our theology. We like to engage the truth. When we have our breakouts at General Conference in Victoria, May 7th to 10th, be there. Gary said I could work in some stuff as I go. Anyways, and be in Calgary, August 2019 for the Pentecostal World Conference. Anyways, moving right along. But when we offer breakouts and so on, our leaders want to engage truth. It will be at least one of, if not the largest breakout, because truth matters. And you read the New Testament, the churches were always being cautioned or even corrected about what they were letting into the life of the church that was being called prophecy or being called truth, but it was deception and it was leading people astray. So I love that I sense a new hunger to worship in spirit and truth, and to then be involved in witness with grace and truth like Jesus. And so I do see missional breakouts all over the country. There's churches alive. Any of the churches that I view as thriving or at least growing, they have all found ways to engage the community. They've all found ways to be missional in their thinking. And as Paul was pointing out again last night, it's always led by the leader. So pray for me as I go to the Commonwealth Games in chaplaincy. That doesn't go away. I want to lead you. I think Paul, General Superintendent's got to be able to stand up here and look people in the eyes and say, my eyes and my prayers are targeted on Jordan, and they're targeted on Ryan. And I care deeply for Erica, because they're my friends in sports, but they don't know Jesus from Justin Trudeau. So pray for me, right? But you get it? All of us. And that's what encourages me. Our leaders are catching that.
Cool. Question for Paul. This one really interests me because I've got some roots in this. This church is ethnocentric. It's an ethnic church. I don't know what, nationality. Any advice for them on how they would begin making a move to becoming multicultural from kind of uni-ethnic? There'd be an ethnic minority, want to move to multicultural.
My response is that when you think of the churches in the New Testament, whether it's Ephesus or whatever, we know in Ephesus that there were probably within a short time 200 house churches, but it was called the church at Ephesus. And when Paul wrote to the churches, or Peter wrote to the churches, there were probably groups of churches that were known by that geographical location. And I like to go back to 1 Corinthians 12, where Paul talks about the body as it relates to a local congregation, that the arm doesn't say to the leg, you need to be an arm, or that the shoulder doesn't say to the foot, you need to be a shoulder. And I think we need to get back to the fact that there is the church in Edmonton, which from my perspective would be any evangelical congregation regardless of denomination. And that we realize that God calls different congregations, I believe, to reach different parts of the community. And I think sometimes we put pressure on ourselves because we have this ideal that we should be reaching everybody, when God has given us the gifts, the talents, the personalities to become excellent at reaching the people who are like us. I'm not saying we shouldn't be multicultural. I live in Northern California where you are highly multicultural at that point. And I'm not saying I'm against that, but I think sometimes we need to realize what has God given us in terms of language, in terms of culture, etc., to reach them. The first time I went to Cuba, I was asked, will you do a pastor's conference? And I said, no. And they said, why? I said, I don't know Cuba. I know North America, but it takes a lot of audacity for me to tell Cuban pastors how to act, until they told me. Well, you see, all of our churches were started by North American missionaries, and we have the same problems you do in North America. I said, I can deal with that. Okay. But I think we need to look at the church in a much more cosmic perspective and realize that I believe every congregation has a calling, and you don't necessarily have to be doing what other churches do.
Cool.
Can I get one resource?
Yeah, good. Go for that.
Arising from my involvements at Vancouver Broadway, where we worked with 80 different nationalities, and then working with some of the folks at ACT seminaries and others, you can go online to the World Evangelical Alliance, whoever's asking this question, and we worked on a leadership process that you engage in, it's called Becoming Intentionally Intercultural. And the reality is in urban Canada especially, and other communities as well, the ability to respond to other cultures is a very definite attitude and process and theology, and that manual and the process that's there will help you really engage, is that who we're to be, and should we go down that road? And the other thing I would say is your children will lead you, because once you get into 1.5 and second generation, they're going to be leading the way into what it looks like to be intercultural.
Yeah, great thought. Dave, going to throw one back at you. Somebody would like a word of advice for next gen up and coming leaders. Word of advice to them.
Follow Jesus as I follow Jesus. I'm an 18-year-old trapped in a 62-year-old body. I know everybody thinks that, but here's what I've understood. I want to die more passionate for Jesus than I was when I was a 22-year-old leader here in Calgary. And for our next-gen leaders, I would say that you are feeling the pressure of a changing culture that demands that we have ears to hear what the Spirit is saying. And there's a lot of us out there that want to lay down our lives and lay down foundations, much as the Scriptures encourage, so that we believe that you will rise and go way beyond anything we've ever seen in Alberta, Northwest Territories, or Canada before. But for you to experience that, cynicism won't work. A cynic is somebody who's come to the right conclusions but with the wrong attitude. Yeah, what is required is for you to have ears to hear from the Lord of the harvest. What's the next obedient step that you can take to close the gap between the ideal heart you have for the church and for mission and the realities that we face today? And keep your heart soft, because your next generation needs you. And you won't make it in leadership for another 20 years for that generation if you don't keep a soft heart, a sharp mind, and a passion for Jesus and His church.
Cool. That kind of hits a nerve. Paul would like to speak to this as well.
I'd just like to build on what Dave said and maybe look at it from my generation. When it comes to turnaround churches, God has allowed me to have some expertise. When it comes to church planting, I'm a layperson. I've never done it. So for 5 years, we saw God do an amazing thing in turnaround. For the next 10 years, God let us plant 100 new congregations out of 108 attempts. Most of our congregations, the first Sunday started between 70 to 140 people. Our largest, the first Sunday, started with over 500 people. And almost all of them were done by next-gen people. And when I stood up at I have not used the R word, I haven't retired, but when I stepped down from my day job, running the district, as you were, most of those church planners were there. And I said to them, my job has been to resource you, protect you, support you. You just need to know I don't understand you. Let me give you one example. One of our most effective church plants was in Ventura, California. Ventura, again, is kind of like a mini Canada in terms of its approach to godly things. And for 6 months before the church started, the husband and wife team, and then as they built their core group, every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, went into all the bars, pubs, and taverns where the 20 to 30-year-olds hung out and gave out free shot glasses. Now, Baptists and Pentecostals don't know what a shot glass is. So I tell them it's a communion cup that has been supersized. Okay. And on the shot glass it said, "Give us a shot." And on the other side was the website of the church. They said, you would not believe the conversations we had about God and Christ and the Bible in these pubs. When they had their first opening Sunday, the launch Sunday in a movie theater, there were 250 people there. 50 people were the launch team. 200 people were people who had gotten a free shot glass. On the third Sunday, an older woman for that congregation walked in because they were all young people. She said, "Who's the pastor?" The pastor introduced himself. She said, "My 2 30-year-old sons still live at home. I can't get them out. But I wanted to meet somebody who thought enough of them to go into a pub and give them a shot glass and invite them to church." So we have to understand in our generation, God let us figure out how to reach our generation, and sometimes we haven't done a good job. And we need to let people who are coming along figure out how to minister to their generation and protect them and resource them and help them.
Wow, that's great. Dave, I like this question. I've got more questions than we'll ever get through, as we've only got about 6 minutes. Neat question. What would the lead prayer request be that would be shareable with this group that people could pray for you about, for you?
Someone actually asked that to me personally yesterday, and I think it is because, you know, I refuse to be satisfied. I continue to see the gap between the ideal and the real, whether that's on a national scale or down to some pretty specific areas. Pray that I maintain healthy dissatisfaction, that I don't lose heart, that it doesn't overwhelm, but at the same time that there's a freshness of spirit and a freshness of vision and a freshness of life, so that at the end I do finish stronger and more in love with Jesus and the church and with those who don't know Jesus than when I started. So to keep that dissatisfaction healthy, to keep dependent, keep fresh in spirit, and that would be wonderful to be prayed for.
Can we try and remember that? I know, I'm not the best note taker, but I think we should try and seal that in our memory a bit, right? Paul, you kind of started something here. Give some examples of how the apple churches act like oranges. So the small church that needs to start acting, leading bigger.
Sure.
For instance.
Okay. Here's two main differences. Smaller churches are relationally led. Aunt Minnie, Uncle Albert's feelings are more important than reaching lost people. Larger churches generally are mission and vision led. Relationships are important, but the vision trumps relationships, particularly when that mission and vision is to reach lost people. Smaller churches, apples, are usually group-led. They may say the pastor's the leader, but there's those power brokers, the godmothers and godfathers that run things. Larger churches are staff-led, and they begin to get serious about accountability and achieving goals. So those are the two major differences between oranges and apples.
Cool. Dave, talking a lot about vitalization here. Just underscore again, where does multiplication fit into this strategy? We're all about vitalization, but where does multiplication, church planning fit in with this?
Yeah, in our 2020 initiative, we intentionally worded it as with a shared vision for revitalization and multiplication, because it's about the mission, it's about the Great Commission, it's about making disciples. And so these are not one versus the other, they're integrated. Our 2020 vision has been integrated about we abide, spiritually alive, we're living in truth, and as a result, you ask of the Father what you will, and this is the Father's will, that he receive much glory. And what is that? Our fruitfulness. So revitalization and multiplication are the evidences of that fruitfulness that we want to have as a fellowship. So you need both. They're together. A revitalized church has got to multiply. It's got to. And all of our currently healthy churches, and it's interesting how many of our pastors will communicate they have a growing or thriving church compared to what the statistics tell us. So there's the math and then the art of evaluation. But if you're healthy, you'll multiply. You'll find some strata in your community or some community nearby that needs a life-giving witness of Jesus Christ. So the two are just hand in glove.
Paul, one last question here. We just got 60 seconds. Somebody that was, people are going home wrestling with setting some goals. So I think you mentioned needing to set some of those goals. Could you speak to the issue of realistic goal, achievable, not easy, but as they go to set goals for their churches, home, whatever size they are, any comment on what's wise and realistic?
When we work with small churches, because this will happen in large churches, so I want to talk about small churches, they become staff-led. The word staff has nothing to do with money. It's the marriage of responsibility, authority, and accountability. And we say to all the staff, whether it's a small church or a large church, if you're a staff member, if you're over the children's ministry, if you're over the youth ministry, if you're over the worship ministry, everybody has the same 3 goals, even though you may have different goals for your ministry. Number 1, how many people are going to come to Jesus through your ministry? Which means that if you're in charge of children's ministry, you're not simply responsible for the children people bring to you every Sunday, but you're to grow the children's ministry with unchurched children. You're to grow the nursery with unchurched babies. Everybody has an evangelism goal. Everybody has a leadership development goal. Tom Sawyer did not want to whitewash the fence. He got everybody else to do it, and Tom got the credit. That's a good youth pastor. That's a good children's pastor. That's a good pastor. Churches grow as you multiply groups and multiply leaders, and so all of the leaders under you have to understand, I've got to be developing leaders. And then the third goal is, by what percentage will your ministry grow this year? Because if the children's ministry, the youth ministry, the worship ministry, the small group, if they all grow by 8%, your church will grow by 8%. And so everybody has to have an evangelism goal, a leadership development goal, and a growth goal.
Good. Thank you. Boy, we're up for time. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's just honor these guys. Thank you for the great input.